BJ from Game Gumbo. I've got my guests here, Mike Grade from Rock Manor Games and Clarence Simpson, the designer of Merchants of Magic. We are talking about some spicy odd games, and one of those that I'm super excited about is
it's the expansions for Merchants of Magic, but it's also the first time Merchants of Magic's on Kickstarter. So
okay.
It's one of the only games Rock Manor Games has released that didn't get its own Kickstarter, partly because it was just sort of, a little roll and write game. But we've added a lot to it and beefed it up, so now it can have its proper Kickstarter release.
So it's set in the Set a Watch universe. So Mike, I am curious. I want to hear some inside baseball. How did you find this game? Did you already know Clarence, or were you looking for something to add?
Was I looking for something to add? I wasn't looking for anything in particular. We never really are. We're just looking for stuff that like sort of fits the games we like and the games we sort of put out. But I mean, Clarence can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was during COVID times, and during COVID times there's these speed pitching publisher speed pitching events at some of the conventions. Origins. I've done it in person at Origins. I've never done it at Gen Con because I'm too busy. I've done it Unpub. But basically, it's like in 2 hours, you see like 12 designs. And the publisher is the one who moves around, just like speed dating when you're dating like on a date. This is just dating a game. And the publisher is the one who's moved so the designer can keep their game set up. And during COVID, and I mean, they still do it now, even after COVID, because I think it was really successful. They do speed pitching on like online in Discord or on, online with Tabletop Simulator and stuff.
I watched DJ Bell do one, Steve, one time. Jay did a speed pitch, but it was actually everybody got to watch it. That was kind of wild to see that.
Yeah. So, at these speed pitches events, you get pitched, about 10 or 12 games. And some of these from some of these pitches, I've signed a couple games, and from some of them, I basically make a list of the 2 or 3 that sound interesting, and I follow up with the designer and try to play it, or get in deeper detail because it's a speed pitch. You're only talking to them like 5 to 8 minutes or something like that. And I met Clarence on one of these online events. The online one I went to with Clarence is actually my most successful. I signed 2 games from that speed pitch, and I haven't signed any from any in-person event since then. I think one more maybe digitally, but like that was my most successful one was during COVID when it was like the only game in town.
Steve, I feel like this is an episode of Newlywed Game. Like we're supposed to reveal what Clarence says is the actual truth about what happened on that first time they met. And it turns out they were actually in Paris and they were,
no, that was definitely online.
This is where we would have to use private chat.
I just don't know if it was like, because I did a couple of those, I'm not sure if it was like the first one like in 2020 or if it was more like 2021, like year wise, I'd be totally off. So if it was like a Newlywed Game, it's like, when's our anniversary? I'd be like 1 year, 2 year, like I'd be way off on the years.
Clarence, how close did Mike get it?
So, well, I was actually going to say, so Mike, I don't know if you remember this, but we actually didn't meet at the event, the actual speed pitch event, because they had like 2 separate hour-long blocks. And so like you were in one block and I was in the other block, and Mike just did his due diligence because they hand all of the
that's okay.
All the like sell sheets the designers have to all of the publishers, even if you don't have a meeting with them at the time. And so Mike looked back through those sell sheets and saw it and contacted me actually outside of the event.
Interesting.
Right.
So
like I said, so I do make a list. Like I'll go through the pitches, obviously, and I'll make my notes of the ones I'm getting pitched in real time. And then I do go through and look through all the sell sheets. And I usually pick, I try to follow up with at least 2 or 3 to follow up with and like maybe play the game online or play around online. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but like that's about sort of what I think we could ever handle. Like I don't want to like pitch everybody because I know you can't publish everything, right? So you got to do some filtering.
So Clarence, give us the elevator pitch. Tell the chat crew, sell them right now. You're talking directly to them. What is Merchants of Magic? What's unique about it? I know it's a roll and write. So
So Merchants of Magic is a roll and write. I guess there's a couple unique things about it. It uses polyhedral dice to be kind of like your resource generators in the game. I guess quick context here: you're playing as in a fantasy world as a merchant of a magic item shop, and so you have these customers that are looking for specific magic items in your shop. And you're trying to craft those items and sell them to the customers, but they're impatient, so if they don't find what they want, they're going to look in competitors' stores. And the way that is done functionally, mechanically, is that you have these cards that represent the customers, the orders that they're looking for, and every round they will rotate around the table. So you'll have a set number of customers that are in your shop at any given time, and you can fulfill those orders in that round. But if not, then the leftmost one's going to rotate to the clockwise to the next player. And so you can also kind of look to your right and see which orders are going to be coming to you in the future rounds to kind of plan ahead a bit. And so that kind of gives a little bit more, I think, player interaction that is typical in a lot of roll and writes.
100%.
Definitely.
I mean, I would say that was the core mechanic that sort of sold me on it. And I was like, oh, this is not me just playing solitaire.
Yeah, a lot of them are basically solitaire, but it's a crunchy roll and write. You kind of advertise it, so where's that crunchy decision come from? Is it from the time aspect, or is it from what you're using with your dice?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's from the dice aspect of it. So again, it comes with the polyhedral dice. So there's a D6, a D8, D10, and a D12 in the game. And so what you do every round is one person rolls the dice, and then everybody's simultaneously using those dice to mark circles on their player sheets. There are all these circles that have a number in them, right? And so you're trying to complete, or you're trying to craft items and weapons and armor, and you're also trying to research these spell enchantments like fiery or shocking or whatever, and you combine those together to get like fiery shield or staff of the dwarves, which are the magic items.
Mhm.
And you to mark any given circle, you have to have each circle has a numeric threshold. So it'll say like you have to have a value of 7 or higher. Or it might say on the other side for the spell research, you have to have a value of 4 or lower. So you actually need both high and low values are good. High values are good for crafting items. Low values are good for the spell research as well. And
Ooh,
in addition, all the circles that you can mark are broken down into 6 columns, and each column you're only allowed to use certain dice in those columns.
Huh.
So yeah, there's kind of a lot to think about. With any given die roll, you have a lot of options about what you could mark, but there's definitely some like efficiency puzzle of thinking out, I can do this now, but should I? Is there something that's
Mhm.
more optimal? Depending on what you think might happen in the future.
You could, but should you? Stacy has a question for you, Mike. Is this the only way to get the base game?
So
Right now?
the base game has and was released. I can tell you that we, like Rock Manor Games, in our office and our warehouses, we don't have any left. Well, we may have a few in Europe. I think there may be like less than 6 over in our EU hub. So obviously, if you're in the United States, you can't really get that one over here without paying a huge shipping bill, which I wouldn't advise. But is it available? I mean, it's not out of print. We're going to be reprint. Like, it's out of print in that we haven't reprinted it yet. We're going to reprint it as part of this Kickstarter. But if you are a sly consumer, you may be able to find copies at a retailer, online somewhere, on Amazon. Like, I don't know. There's like different levels of out of print, right? It's like
Right.
out of print, you can't get it directly from the person you think it is. There's like out of print, like it's the prices are a little higher on Amazon, and there's like out of print, like it's a Grail game. You can't find it anywhere except on the used market for like hundreds of dollars. And
So this would be one of the easiest ways to get it is just to get the base game.
I mean, this is the easiest way. This is definitely probably the cheapest and easiest way to guarantee that you'll get it, especially with like affordable shipping. But I would not be surprised if there are a few retailers that may have it may have a copy or two on their shelves, or there may be like a couple online retailers that have a copy or two. I haven't personally like searched for it online and like really clicked around to look for it.
So Clarence, Evan wants to know, did you return the staff to the dwarves?
I sold it.
You sold it.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, and so the Kickstarter is not just about getting that base game, but there's also 2 brand new expansions. As Stacy said, hey, she's been looking. She can't find it. So Stacy,
I would trust Stacy. Stacy, if you're not finding it like easily, I would say it's pretty much out of print. All the last few copies we had. I know near the end of the summer, like that's when like our last copies got cleaned out from like our web store. Like we had like a box or 2 we found when we were doing an inventory check, and we sort of found like a dozen, and those dozen sort of went out the door pretty quick. And I saved a few for like this Kickstarter for like reviewer purposes.
Tell us about the new expansions, Clarence. What you got in these new expansions?
Yeah, I mean, so we've got it divided up into 2 packages here. We've got Dangerous Business and Draft of the Dragons, and each one has a couple different expansion modules that can be kind of mixed and matched however you like. You can play with everything. You can play with just one of the modules, however you want to, whatever kind of experience you want to craft for yourself and for your game group. Now, as for the specifics, like here in the Dangerous Business, the main thing that we have in here is we've got these new sponsored adventurer boards, which kind of replace the sponsored adventure cards from the base game.
Okay.
And so what they do is you now have more magic items that you can craft for your sponsored adventurers. They have a much bigger list now, and they have a combat value. That's what those little discs down there that you can the dials that you can rotate. And so every time that you craft an item for them that is on their list, it increases their combat value by some certain amount. And at the same time, we have a bunch of creature cards, and you're going to be dealing out at the beginning of the game. You're going to deal out a tier 1, tier 2, or level 1, level 2, level 3, and then an unhallowed boss as a final boss creature. So 4 creatures dealt out at the beginning of each game, and they all have a combat value threshold that you have to meet to defeat them, and they all have their own like special rewards that you get for defeating them. So there's a lot more variety now in that respect compared to the base game, where you pretty much always got the same thing for helping out your sponsored adventurer.
Yeah, like if you're familiar with the game, the first time you get something for your sponsored adventure, you get some potions, which help you manipulate dice. And the other 2 rewards were like just fill in a circle. Okay. And the creatures allow us to like really mix that up and give you like permanent buffs. There's a lot more effects and bonuses that you can mix and match to change those sort of rewards that you're used to. And those combos you would set up from the original game.
We've got some solo players out there. Robust solo play with this?
Yeah, that's definitely what we were going for. We had, just a really basic, solo mode in the original game, and so we really wanted to try and expand that out in this version here. And so what we now have is we have a sort of solo AI player that you're playing against. We have this traveling merchant board down here, and so there will actually be cards that are in front of the traveling merchant. We're trying much more to replicate the 2-player experience in the solo mode here. And so as this happens, it's going to go back to a rotating carousel of these order cards, just like a 2-player game would. And the traveling merchant will occasionally claim some of those cards. So stuff that you see that you think might come back to you don't sometimes, just like in a real multiplayer game.
Stacey's got a good question. I'm always curious. Yeah. Are these expansions that were kind of culled from the game to make the base game more, easy to get out there, streamlined and all that? Or were these things that, how long were they in development? Were these things that you wanted to add on later?
Yeah, I mean, I think, gosh, Mike, I don't know if you remember exactly when this happened, but as far as me and these ideas, I didn't really think too much about the expansions until after the base game was out. and then at some point Mike asked me about it, and then that started the whole brainstorming process.
I don't. Yeah, I think. I mean, I remember the first time, like I played it was at Unpub. You brought the ideas with you to Unpub, in Baltimore, and we played through them all.
Right.
I don't know. I don't remember planting the seed ahead of that. But I guess if I did, good for me. But I mean, I thought I think what Clarence brought and the ideas he brought, I know some things he put in the expansion to sort of address some of this game was very well received, but some of the few negative quibbles that people had with the game, like Clarence definitely tried to address with some of the expansions. So like, I think he did a little bit of everything with the expansions, and that's why there's so many different modules. He's like, oh, I want to improve the solo player. So like, here's some ideas around that. And people had quibbles with like drawing cards and getting a random order. So like, here's how I'm going to address that. And
Jay says, how much take that? How punchy is that? You guys talked about the interaction that's built into the game more than most roll and writes, but how punchy? Very punchy.
So I would say in the base game, there's
negative quibbles. I like that, Evan.
I would say in the base game, there's not very much. I mean, there is kind of like the rotating order cards. Like there's always the chance that you're looking to your right at something you don't have yet, and then that person takes it, right? Like that's before you get it. But that's not quite like a really hard feeling take that, because usually it's because they need it or they were able to fulfill it. It's not like hate drafting necessarily most of the time.
You're not blocking up people's squares like on
right.
some of the games. It's not that kind of punchiness, right?
Right. But with that said, there is in the Draft of the Dragons, one of the things that we did add was an optional action card as part of this new action selection system, which we haven't talked about yet, that can let you steal orders from other players' shops.
Okay.
But again, that's a very optional thing. Some people will be really turned off by that, and that's fine. You don't have to play with it. But we've also had some people ask for more player interaction. So that's
I think so. For me, like I would even rewind the question and go like, "What do you mean by take that?" Because I think take that means different things to different people.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes take that is literally like if there's interaction and someone can mess with my thing at all, and I'm not playing a strictly solo game. Like if people can do anything other than like take a worker placement spot, like some people define that as take that. I define take that as more of those games where like you're spending actions to set, like instead of doing what you need to do to like help yourself score more points, you're actually spending actions or turns or whatever to set the leader of the game back. You're literally saying take that, because I'm in third or second, and like the second and third players need to get the first player to like knock him down so they can actually have a chance at winning.
It needs to be hateful for it to be a hate draft.
Right. So like so it depends on how you define take that.
Yeah.
We do not have any of that type of stuff. Like if you are taking someone's order, I agree with Clarence that the nastiest thing in the game is this entice action when everyone selects. There's an action selection phase in Draft of the Dragons where everyone selects a secret action and plays it face down, then you reveal it. And you can do things like just take a potion. You can you can start researching a potion recipe, which gives you a powerful effect. You can advertise, which helps you select the orders and the people that are coming into your shop, or you can swap an order in your shop with an order in front of someone else's shop. And that is the nastiest thing we have in the game. And for me, that's not that nasty.
Yeah.
Personally. But I mean, I know that I have I'm not as much of a Euro gamer as other people are, so I have a higher threshold for that anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a game about objecting to other people doing things during the game. So, I mean, you're not opposed to interaction. Tell us about the Dragons one, though. What do we have in store with the Dragons expansion, Clarence?
Yeah, I mean, so Mike just covered some of it there. The big, like, kind of core thing here is this new action selection phase that happens kind of at the beginning of each round. And so each player is going to have a set of action cards that can do one of several different things each round. You might just do the brew action, which will just get you an extra potion. You might do the recipe action, which will get you one of these these recipe cards that are dealt out at the beginning of the game. I'll come back to those. Or you can do the advertise action, which can let you kind of there's like now a central market of these higher value, more difficult order cards that you can kind of once you see one that you think you want to go for, you can use your advertise action and reserve that order. And what that means is you take it out of the market, put it by your sheet with a little guild seal token on it, which means that you've reserved it. You haven't completed yet. You have until the end of the game to complete it. And if you do, great. And if you don't, then it counts as -2 coins, -2 victory points at the end. So there's a little bit of making sure that you want something before you do that. But yeah, so those and the entice action, the swapping thing that we the take that action that we talked about earlier. Those are kind of like the big actions that you get during that action selection phase. Now, as far as the recipe cards go, that was another big thing here. We've got these new, we've got 8 new recipe cards, one associated with each enchantment in the game. And so each one will give you, if you take the recipe, it has a couple potion icons on there showing the 3 colors of or some of the 3 colored potions from the original game. And so now the colors have meaning. So to do a certain recipe, you'll need to have certain color potions to do whatever the ability of that potion is. Or alternately, since each potion recipe is associated with a enchantment, if you have completed that enchantment on your player sheet, it allows you to use any color potion to get those abilities. So that's just more kind of different player powers that we wanted to introduce into the game through that system there.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Jay said you answered his questions. He's already backed it. Thank you, Jay.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you, Jay.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jay.
Any stretch goals? Any bonus content we're talking, Mike?
So we're really moving away from stretch goals, sort of as a company and a philosophy. I think back when we started on Kickstarter, it made a lot more sense to do than it does now. In my experience, the publishers who are doing Kickstarter right have already planned out their stretch goals, and they're just using it to fuel, the crowdfunding engine. So for me, I just don't like putting these artificial money goals with something we've sort of already planned for on including. So what we're moving towards more is like, I really like interacting with the community and like having stuff going on during the Kickstarter. I mean, obviously the first day is a big deal, but I like having stuff going on throughout the time. So we're really moving more towards these like daily reveals or like free gifts or unlocks, whatever you want to think of it. So, I mean, there's stretch goals in the fact that like every day you're going to get something new added to the game. But unlike stretch goals, we're giving it to you no matter what. Like now that we've funded, we're going to give you unlocks. And we already even have on our page, since you're on there on the video, if you scroll down, I think we have like free gifts and like live streams. So basically we're trying to have like a live stream. We want to have something for the community to interact with every day. So if they're checking the campaign regularly, whether they're just stopping by to leave a comment, check on how it's doing, whether they want to see what the new unlock is, whether they want to sign in to a stream like this one or a future stream to ask questions or see more about the game. We're trying to just have stuff going on at all times during our Kickstarter for the community to interact with. And this goes back to sort of my comment earlier about conventions, which is what I think is so great about conventions is, you're in person and you get to make some real connections. And the great thing about Kickstarter is you get to make a lot of connections with a lot of backers. But having done as many Kickstarters I've done, I've realized that the people who are actually like involved in the comments and interact there are sometimes sort of like the vocal minority. And there's plenty of people that just click the back button and they sort of leave, or they just click the back button and they watch passively from afar. So I'm trying to give them more options to interact with us and maybe get a little bit more insight into the game. So, if they don't feel like they have a lot to say as far as comments go, maybe they'll, instead of just reading the comments and checking the page regularly, maybe they'll watch a stream and come up with a good question about the game, or they'll feel like they got to know us better or our team better because they watched a stream of us playing it. So
that is fantastic. We'll keep an eye out on the project. Steve's got the link to it right there in the chat. So chat crew, check it out. Thank you, Jay Bell, for backing it. Thank you, Stacy, for all the good questions on that. That's Merchants of Magic with the 2 expansions out on Kickstarter right now. We'll take a look at those. Already funded, so it's rolling along.